I'm going to introduce Eva, who you know anyway, but I'll tell you a little bit more about her in case you don't. She is a 3-time Tony Award-winning producer of shows on Broadway, as well as an NYCLU and an ACLU honoree, which I didn't even know that. Good work. Her productions have won 4 Olivier Awards, 2 Grammys, 2 Emmys, and 19 Tonys. They include Jagged, Little Pill, Oklahoma, Cruel Intentions, the 90s musical, which is one of the ones I want to talk about, and Hip Hop Nutcracker with Curtis Blow, and Titanique, which is near and dear to our hearts. Eva Price, thank you for being the centerpiece of our conversation today.
Thrilled to be here. Long-time listener, not first-time caller.
Not first-time caller, multi-time caller. Cool. Well, I'll just introduce myself very quickly. I'm Jim McCarthy. I'm the CEO and the co-founder of Stellar. I have been involved in online events, including and especially theater, since right around the time that my business that I founded in 2002, Gold Star, shut down and dropped 100% in sales volume from about Tuesday to about Thursday back in March of 2020. Some of you will remember that whole time in our history. Anyway, we started Stellar in the wake of that. Since then, we sold Gold Star, and I am now fully on Stellar, and we are pioneering the world of digital live entertainment and theater and performing arts and music and everything else. And I'm thrilled to be here. Actually, we'll tell you guys more about this, but I have a book on this subject coming out next month, so more to come on that. But anyway, that's me, and I'm thrilled to be having you all together today as well. So why don't we just go around and just, you can keep it brief and whatever, but love to kind of just get a sense of what you do and what brought you to this conversation. And why don't we start with Michael Bailey?
Hello. My name is Michael Bailey. I do want to preface, I do have a speech impediment, so it's not the Wi-Fi, it's me. So, but I am currently the Media Communication Associate at New 42, and I was the this year's young professionals in the rewind. I was this year's TEDx Broadway Young Professional cohort. That's it. And what brings me here is I heard about Titanique. It's French, and I actually just saw the Fox 5 News promo with Frankie Grande. So huge Celine Dion fan. Had to see, and producing wise, it's the first time in my life I haven't, in my community there, I haven't heard about producing. I didn't know that existed, but then calling I'm like, wait, that exists. So me just trying to explore that a path and seeing this is something that I can actually do and actually pursue, and it's a pleasure to meet you.
It's a pleasure to meet you too, Michael. And I was seriously, so his boss, Russell Granite at New 42, was going to speak at TEDx Broadway, but couldn't do it for unfortunate personal reasons that we're going to have it next year. But I was really looking forward to that talk. So we'll see it next year. You won't be in the Young Professionals cohort again, unfortunately, because that's a one-time thing, but you're still allowed to come. So we'll see you then. All right. Why don't we'll just go through all the Michaels. Michael Galvez, welcome. Thank you.
Hi. I'm Michael Galvez. I am the Digital Marketing Associate at BFE Management. So we handle Fine Sensitive for Below, Stomp, all of that fun stuff. And what brought me here essentially is because I've always just kind of read a lot about like articles about like you, Eva. So it's just like, it's always like a very, I think there's one that Forbes, like, or I don't remember exactly which outlet it was. And back when you were having brain surgery, and that kind of stuck with me. And I was like, oh, if one of these days, I'd love to pick her brain and just, talk shop and talk about the art we both love. And also helps that my girlfriend is a big Oklahoma Revival fan. So she was like, you got to do this.
Yeah.
So
excellent.
That's me.
we use a different phrase than pick my brain since
Yeah.
brain surgery, but
Yeah.
I get what you mean.
Yeah, that one's that one's got a little sensitivity to it. I would think. That's
My
been
bad
done.
on that.
That's been done. All right, Michael, great to have you here. And let's go to our other Michael Corte. Welcome, Michael.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Corte. Really excited to be here. I make a lot of Broadway content that lives on YouTube, on my personal YouTube channel. So we do a lot of Broadway mashups and medleys, and have won some Webby Awards, and are really excited to have a theater audience over on YouTube. I'm here because I'm trying to bring what we do on screen to stage. So that's why I'm here and excited to be here.
Very cool. Thank you. Cassie. And you know what? Can you pronounce your last name correctly so that I don't make that mistake?
Yeah, it's Ayers. Ayers.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So I'm Cassie Ayers. So for about 10 years, I was a theater director in Chicago. And then more recently, I started transitioning into film and television. I currently am an acting coach for Nickelodeon. But yeah, that kind of transition, seeing how theater can, kind of sympathize with film was very interesting to me. And then in March of 2020, similar to Jim, I had big plans. We had a big original musical I've been working on for about 7 years that I wrote and directed. We were supposed to open on Friday the 13th. We thought it was a good spooky date for our spooky musical, but of course, the whole city of LA and the world shut down. So that really kind of got me introduced to Stellar and just, curious about a world where we can kind of take maybe some things about film and television, like how they're accessible and can be watched from across the world, but also like the things I love about live theater and trying to find kind of like this middle ground. So I'm very excited to hear more about you all today.
Excellent. All right, Jerome, now's the time to unmute and tell us about yourself.
Hey, thanks for that, Jim. Hello, everybody. Eva, thank you for being here. I am Jerome A. Parker. I'm a writer and a lot of different things, actually. But in 2020, I had that similar experience. And I decided to put up my musical online. I pitched myself into an artistic residency at the Tank. And it was an all-Black creative experience. So that was really important for me. And it was really successful. And because of that, I applied to the Stellar's Emerging Creators Program, and I was a finalist. So I am here because I'm now part of a network of people who create theater in this way. And I want to know more about you all. So thank you for putting this together. And thank you for being here, Eva. And I can't wait to meet all of you.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, Jerome. And thank you for being part of that group. That was a cool group, by the way. The people who applied for the Emerging Creators, we could have given that award to 10 people instead of the 3 that we did. In fact, we had planned to give it to 1 and we just couldn't not give it to more. So we actually expanded it to 3 winners, but boy, we could have done more. It was really such an exciting group of people. Yeah. Okay. Mark, who we met very, very recently at TEDx Broadway.
Yeah,
nice to see you again.
Nice to see you, and that was such a fantastic. That was my first TEDx Broadway, and that was such a fantastic event and a great way to talk about the future of theater. And I love that this is building off of that. So my name is Mark Bristowski. I'm based in New York, and I consider myself sort of an administrative multi-hyphenate. I'm currently consulting on producing and management, and I just did my first live stream theater piece hosted on Stellar last night, and it went very well. And I really do credit that to just Stellar's team and just the breakneck speed of onboarding that we did, and just how amazing and supportive everybody was. And like everybody else here, I am really excited about the blending of media and and as Cassie said, accessibility and reaching out to new audiences. And that's one of the drivers that led me to look into a way to present more theatrical works in a more multimedia and live stream setting. And that's kind of what brought me here today.
Awesome.
In addition to you, Eva, who I am a huge fan of.
You know, I think we should just jump right into, since we're all talking about how much we want to hear from Eva, and we'll just jump right into hearing from Eva. So I think the right way to tee this up, Eva, is to say, why would you say, because you and I talked about this topic a lot in the spring and summer of 2020, and there were a lot of people thinking about it, and some people doing something about online theater and other events, but not many people willing to go as far as you did and do. You know, your thinking on this, I've always said, is beyond that of most of your sort of peers at the, you know, at the professional producer level. Let's talk about that. If you want to, just rewind the clock to your thinking about that then, and where you are today on it, the things that you've produced online since then, and just give us a grounding in where you're coming from on this.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining, and thanks for having me, and thanks for the kind words. You're all really exciting, interesting theater makers, so I'm excited to hear from you too. Like you, Jim, I did it because there was a pandemic, right? Were you about to start Stellar if everything had been going swimmingly? Maybe, because you're innovative like that, but probably not, right? Not before some sort of inciting event. So, you know, like any good piece of theater, we all need an inciting event. And my dramatic inciting event was March 12th, 2020, when I had 5 shows running across the country, including Broadway. And then by evening, I had 0. And I looked at my companies of shows that I had. I looked at my staff. I looked at my own, not just, you know, financial viability to keep my business running, but like my own drivers in life, which is to work, to create, to inspire, to lead, to do, right? I'm not very good at relaxing, though I got better, I will say, in 2020. I certainly hiked more. And so I looked at what the possibilities were, because I wasn't short on content, right? Like I was finally at a place in my career where I was prolific in content. I had shows running, I had shows in development, I had shows at different stages of development. The one thing I didn't have was live audiences, which had never been a thought that crossed my mind in the 15 years I'd been producing. You know, if anything, it had been a lack of content. So, you know, to the thanks of Jim and our friendship and my relationship with Jim and his colleagues and staff at Stellar, and thanks to very incredible entrepreneurial producing partners on my shows, as well as very entrepreneurial and, you know, can-do attitudes of the artists, because it takes the artists to agree to do it, to participate in it, to create for the screen instead of the stage. It was all thanks to that. And I think it all came out of, you know, what was really beautiful. I remember very vividly in spring of 2020, this kind of, we're in this together, can-do attitude that was so vibrant. And I really wish it was still there some days, because it's really not, as I'm sure we all are facing in our everyday rat race, hamster wheel of current times. But with that, you know, with that sort of grace and colleagueship, we were able to come up with ways to transport our content onto the screen, and Stellar was the natural, terrific partner for it.
Yeah, I mean, everything you said is true. You're saying necessity is the mother of invention, but everybody faced the same necessity, but not everybody invented in the same way, which is, to me, and also the innovation and what it yielded. You know, those people some of the people who did that aren't continuing with it despite the benefits. So there must be something just in your makeup that you know moved you toward that. And I guess I don't know, maybe
I'm a crazy person. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, maybe it takes a little bit of craziness. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes something in someone's makeup to become a theater producer. Let's be honest. It's like a insane job. It's a very challenging economic structure. You know, what 1 out of 5 shows are successful, right? So, and you know, I mean, my origin story, which, you know, sometimes people are like, wow, really? You know, I'm sort of like, yes, no big deal, was that I just became a theater producer because I wanted to. I was actually a TV news producer and had been working in politics and television. And I was living in New York, wishing that I was part of a community that I went to see shows at, that I spent money at, that I had friends involved at, never thinking I could do that. And then, you know, I had a wise, very caring friend say to me, you know, you could dream about being a theater producer, or you could just go be one. And I sort of like took that piece of advice and sort of put it towards sort of how I approached my theater producing. And I think producing for Stellar and producing for Livestream was the same thing. I could sort of think about what was possible for my shows that were not happening because live theater was closed, or I could go do my live shows for the internet and for streaming and actually do all the things, or a version of the things that I knew how to do and I was good at. And that drove me. Those drivers I already talked about: inspiring, leading, creating. I did it for the audiences. I did it for my staff. But let me be honest, I did it for myself too. Sure. I needed it. I needed to feel alive again. I needed to feel useful. I needed to feel that I was existing and you know, giving to the world that I was living in. And it helped me feel that value.
I still think that the Jagged Live event was a watershed moment. I think it's still something that, I mean, it may have been the first Broadway-like thing live on Broadway since the pandemic. You know what I mean? Like, we actually had, did anyone see the show? Did anyone see the Jagged Live show in December of 2020 on Stellar? You should have. You really missed it. It was great. It was a great show. But people went bananas. I mean, there were 20,000 people watching. And man, I'll tell you, the thing I remember most is that after the show ended, the chat went on for about an hour and a half. The chat on Stellar went on for like an hour and a half. And Will Clark was in there moderating because he was like really upset, our CTO. And someone proposed that he run for president and then proposed marriage to him. And he had to let them know that he was already married. So that was, but I mean, there was something about that event in particular that I think was the show and the moment really met and it kind of exploded. But that, I mean, any other thoughts on the Jagged Live thing?
Yeah, you hit it on the nose. The show and the event met the moment. You know, like we were at a place still in the pandemic that was about how do we show up and be there for each other, and how do we and how do we create and perform and live and learn, and all the beautiful lyrics that are from Alanis Morissette's album. Like we were living the tenets of that album as a civilization and a society. And I think that helped that we met the moment with that concert, and the moment needed that show, and that show needed that moment. And you know, what's great about doing that Jagged Live concert at that time was we had a fervent fan base that we had built from our 4 months on Broadway that we had kept feeding over the spring and summer through other things. And so that fan base had grown quite a bit. That fan base was already engaged. That fan base was looking for like, what was the next thing that Jagged was going to give to us, that they had been over the months. And the same was true with our cast and our company. We had been doing events with them. We had just done the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade with them. We were doing charity events and virtual events and podcasts. And, you know, so in every aspect, so the content met the moment, but so did the people involved, from us producers to our fans to our company of actors and musicians that got together under very challenging circumstances, like right before another wave had hit New York City, pre-vaccines, right? And put it on. And, you know, I remember I was actually in LA living in the weeks before it, flew back to New York the week of the concert so I could produce the concert live, you know, in the room and be there that night. And then I flew back to New York the following morning. And I was exhausted and depleted and had that whole like post opening night feeling, which is actually utter joy and utter gratitude and total inspiration and so much happiness. Like it was, yet I was so tired, right? So it was like that mix of, you just did this thing that really changed the course and you feel really good from it and you're exhausted. So of course you cry, right? Like that, it was that sort of, cacophony of emotions all coming together. And like, I wasn't alone. I talked to people later, it was like cast members felt that way. Fans felt that way. Our technicians felt that way. It created this thing because it reminded us of what we once had and we just didn't have it anymore. And
but you know what? I agree with that. But also there was another thing that you don't get necessarily with live theater, which is that experience that people were having in the show alongside watching the show. Like that was really something. Like I remember thinking to myself, like something's happening here. When you're in a theater, you theoretically, of course, you are there with other people, but in another way, you're in your own little bubble of whoever you're with. Well, what I was seeing that night was literally hundreds of people meeting each other and really engaging with each other, not only about the show, which they loved, and the songs and the content, the Alanis Morissette content, but also on this other level where they just kind of hit a resonance frequency, and it made me realize what was possible in a way that you can't even really get in some sense. You can't even get it in person.
And it also finally was like the most 2021, 2022 way of experiencing theater, right? Like fans communicate on their phones. Fans communicate with who they're fans with on their phones. Fans communicate with each other on their phones. Having their phone or laptop or whatever, a screen to enjoy and engage simultaneously with is something they didn't get to do in theater until that. So that was really special. Yeah.
Right. So let's turn the page to Titanique, which was what, 6 months later? 6 months later?
We did it in April. Okay. 2021.
So 5 months later.
Yep. More vaccinations by then.
A few people had vaccinations. Yes, it's true. It definitely felt like we'd kind of moved a step along the path of getting out of the pandemic by that point. Maybe not completely, but there was some progress being made.
Yeah. Well, we had costumes for that live stream, so dressers could touch people and things like that.
Right. So the concept behind that was not quite it was not just a concert, it was a little more, right?
Yeah, so Titanique had been around as in concert form since about 2017, 2018. That's when I saw it. I went to see a concert version of it out in Los Angeles because my friends who had been creating it reached out to me and said, "Hey, we made this thing. We think you'd really like it. Come and see it." And one of those friends was actually starring in Cruel Intentions at the time, Constantine Rizzulli. And I just remember being in the dressing room chatting with him, and he was pitching it to me. And I was like, "Connie, this sounds terrible. This is not for me. I'm too busy. No." Cut to.
Well, so, it is kind of terrible in a great way. It's terrible in a great way, I think.
No, it's actually only great.
The terribleness is part of the fun.
It's terribly great. No,
there we go.
I had seen it in concert form because I went to support these friends and became obsessed with it and was like, I must produce this. And finally we're opening very soon in New York. By the time this airs, we'll have opened, I'm sure, in New York. And the reason, I think you had asked like how that came about.
Yeah. And what was the goal too? Like what were you hoping to achieve with it?
Well, because it had only been in concert form, and meanwhile we were supposed to open off-Broadway. We had, after I saw it back in 2018, I optioned the rights, I raised the money, we set out to cast it in January of 2020. We were going to do a press event in April of 2020, and we were going to open in June of 2020. That was the plan. So when COVID upended everything for everyone, it obviously upended Titanique's trajectory at that time. And so the plan was, after having great experiences with Stellar on, Jagged Live, and at that point we'd had another great experience with you, we decided that why not do another, Stellar, live experience. And because we had only done concert version of Titanique before, but we had cast the show because we were supposed to open off Broadway. We were able to sort of come together and put a sort of semi-stage. So it was like a step above a concert. And we were able to try out new material. We were able to try out a little bit of choreography. We were able to work with the actors that we had cast and never got a chance to work with, and make us do a stepping stone for the show's life in New York. That was sort of the impetus and the goal.
Let's pause there, and because I want to let people in and to maybe ask questions. So, but there were things moving forward, Cruel Intentions that we didn't talk about. Although I was going to ask you guys an icebreaker, but we broke the ice anyway, so I didn't. And the icebreaker was going to be what online theater production have you seen that is really approaching it the right way, taking advantage of the medium? And my answer was going to be the Cruel Intentions show, which I thought was done brilliantly. I told you at the time, you've got a knack for this, not just the theater side of it, but the film side of it too. But we won't cover that in the same detail that we did those unless somebody asks a question. But I want to get people in on this to ask you more questions about the process and the thinking, and with a particular focus on from here forward. So we know that during the pandemic, we needed something, and really the value of the online and digital tools go way beyond the lack of audience that the pandemic created into the future with a ton of value. So that I think is really the focus here. Like where do we go from here? I'll just open it up to anybody who has a question along those lines about anything that Eva's done. I'd love to see what you want to know, and let's engage. Who's got something? Cassie.
Hey. Well, I guess I just want to know, I think we've already talked a little bit about like the benefits of just traditional live theater and the benefits of film and television. And now we have this live theater component that is kind of like a newer medium that exists in between these two worlds. And in your experience, what are the strengths of this medium that maybe the other two mediums can't give us, or like anything that was surprising or interesting in these processes that were like, oh, this, story has now been enhanced from maybe the live version that we were originally planning now because of this? You spoke a little to that, but I'm just curious more about like, what is making this medium different than the others, and like, what are its strengths?
Yeah. Just so I'm completely clear on the other mediums, we're talking live.
I guess like
person, and what was the other that you were thinking?
And then like compared to like a fully like a filmed musical, right? But not live, like,
Totally. That's what I thought. Just want to make sure. I was like, maybe she means podcasts.
It could be anything.
Well, so I'm gonna answer that, and then we can rewind and you can re-ask your question to set me up to answer the other part. But I think what makes this special and different, and therefore I think useful and here for the long term, is the fan engagement and the interactivity. Because we all know that if we were in a live theater watching a live show, and if someone as much as gets up or reads their program, people around them get pissed. Certainly the actors are unhappy, and it affects what they're doing. And we certainly don't want them corresponding with each other and having a group think or group reaction, and sharing that, right? So I think the interactivity is a huge, huge component that makes this more exciting and more of today for the audience. I also think, to answer sort of in comparison to films like Chicago the musical or In the Heights the musical, those wonderful, wonderful, studio films, is the economics of it, right? Like I think, Jim says, I've got a knack for getting this down. I appreciate that. It's all not in my hands. It's the great creative teams I put together, the excellent DPs, the amazing directors, the amazing artists. But I appreciate that compliment. But to that effect, I've done it very economically too. And we sort of have come up with this kind of 1 week formula of doing it. We do about 4 days of rehearsal on Zoom. That's how we did it. We do 2 days in person in the venue, blocking, staging, camera blocking, staging, and then the shoot day, which we do 2 performances of. Each one was different, but this was roughly the schedule. We do 2 performances of. One is really a dress rehearsal for the cameras and for the director, and the second one is live. And we tape the first one just in case anything goes wrong. I like to call it the rent live, not live lesson. I don't know if you guys remember when yes, you all do. And so we always record the first run. And so suddenly what would normally be, if this was a movie, an actual studio film, it would be like a year of pre-production, a year of production, and then 30 days of shooting and whatever it comes to for 10, 20, 30, 70, $80 million, we do this in a week with a handful of pre-production, up front, for, a couple $100,000. So that's how it really is different from the other 2 mediums.
I would add that, the other thing you can do with this is that you can give this live, which is a peak experience, or you can give it like a lot, like you were saying, Eva, you're on a high after you come out of one of these shows. That's true as a fan as well. You can create this peak live experience for people all over the world, which neither a film nor an in-person, show can do.
Right.
Neither of those 2 mediums can achieve the thing I just described. To have 50 or 100,000 people having the same live experience, and a theatrical one too, right? So, I was one of the things that I described to people when they asked me, like, what do you mean when you say leveraging the film part of the medium? The example I use is from Cruel Intentions, where there's a book that's crucial to the plot, right? And if you were watching it in the audience, you would see a character holding the book. But online, if you're watching it online, you were actually looking over the shoulder of the character into the book, because that was the shot, right? And so you just get all this texture. It's like a whole different kind of thing, and you can provide that to people all over the world at the same time and create this peak experience. So I would just kind of jam a couple of your answers together to say, like, this is an opportunity in terms of creating an audience engagement that's completely new.
Yeah.
It's a new kind of opportunity.
Yeah, I think the IRL aspect of this, we can't forget. So, like, granted, we're on screens when this is happening, but we're on screens all together at the same time.
Yep.
And that's still a really unique and magical experience as a fan, because so often you're on screens isolated, alone, not together, not having a simultaneous experience. And I don't think we can forget how important that simultaneous, in real time, in real life experience is.
And we see, if you attend one of these, you see it. You don't even have to make the sort of intellectual argument for it. You can just watch it happening in a way that's extremely powerful. All right. Anybody else? Thank you, Cassie. That was a great question. Michael Galvez.
Yeah. So I guess to kind of just riff off of that, on the application side of live streaming, I feel like every one of us here know that this is an innovative and a really good medium, but it seems like a lot of people, especially since it is still new, a lot of artists, a lot of producers, PR agents, everyone in the industry seems to have reservations about live stream sales cutting into in-person sales. So how would you, let's say, if you're given that issue, how would you address that? How, what would you say, besides the fact that if they are not convinced with the current data that we have out there, that this is not exactly the case?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you can geo-target with live stream also. So you could block anyone within the 60-mile or 30-mile radius if you wanted, if you're really concerned about it cannibalizing your in-person sales. That's, when we're in the digital world, we've all sorts of possibilities, right? That you could do. You could create a different in-theater experience for those coming in versus those online that make it kind of a must a must-have. You can price point in different ways. Make them of equal price point, and then if you lose a sale to live stream, well, you gained the equal price point for what you would have gotten in person. I mean, so I think there's lots of like little tactical ways of doing it, from a marketing, from a strategic, from a discussion standpoint. I would say that, and this is the data you're referring to, I would say that, the live capture of a theatrical event is not new to the pandemic or new to Stellar, right? These have been around for years. And what we know about the live capture of theatrical events, from John Leguizamo to, something at the National Theater, is that the minute those shows then have a live in-person iteration that has followed the live capture digital iteration, it does tenfold.
Yeah.
Sales are up, interest is up,
Yeah.
press opportunities are up. And so I just point to that. I point to the data.
I put it under the category of duh, right? Because in a sense, it's marketing, right? I mean, the analogy that I give, it's actually in my book, is imagine that it's 1985 and you're in charge of the NBA. And the NBA at that time, for those of you who don't know, was just coming out of a period of being really, really unsuccessful. Like, the NBA almost shut down in the late 70s. They're coming out of that. They have Larry Bird and Magic Johnson rivalry. They got Michael Jordan coming into the league. And all of a sudden, basketball is just skyrocketing in popularity. Imagine if someone comes to you, the commissioner of the NBA, and says, you know what I think we ought to do? I think we ought to take basketball off TV, because then people will pay more for the tickets in the arena. You don't want to cannibalize sales of the tickets in the arena, do you? Because won't they just watch it on TV instead? And obviously the idea is absurd if you think that that's a good idea. It's an absurd idea, and it's the same thing, like, in a sense, that if you really think the Chicago movie hurt the sales of Chicago, I would be just super curious to see your evidence for that, because instead what I think we have is a show that is running for decades for some reason. Right. It's a good show. Don't get me wrong, but there was certainly a lot to be said for that. I just think, this is one of those things. And by the way, we technically do support geo-targeting or geo-fencing shows, but I think that's only to be done in if you have very specific reasons. Otherwise, you're kind of just, cutting your legs out from under you. But I think I don't know why people aren't convinced by the overwhelming data. National Theater Live has been going for 12, 13 years, and they have the receipts to show that when people see those shows live at home in Manchester or Liverpool or wherever, it makes them come to the theater in London more. So I don't know. It seems pretty obvious to me. I think people are just being obstinate sometimes, Michael.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I think that I've been on this train for like 10 to 15 years. Of live streaming theater because of all of those reasons. I was at the Public 10 years ago, and I have a whole blog series on it. So the pandemic actually sort of made this real for everyone, which I'm really, really excited about. But Eva, I'm gonna have a question about the future of this medium and theater. With now that Meta is here, and VR is becoming a part of our lives, do you feel that there's a place for live theater in that space?
What's Meta?
Meta.
Oh, Meta.
Sorry, Meta. It's Facebook.
I was like, Meta.
Sorry, Meta is that Facebook
Got it.
VR sort of world where I believe it's really transforming the 21st century and where we're going. So I want to know if you are sort of looking in those spaces. Do you think that theater has a future in those live theater, specifically in those spaces?
Yeah, I was asked this question at the end of the pandemic, or what we thought was the end of the pandemic, around when theater was reopening, and I think the question by a couple different people, probably on a Jim McCarthy panel, and one of the questions was how am I guesstimating I would use as a live theater producer the virtual space and what I learned from streaming and digital theater. And I guess what I would say is that I think it does still have, absolutely still has a robust and vibrant future. I think Meta and VR and the various technologies that are forthcoming and even exist already can enhance live theater through other lanes, through post-show experiences, through pre-show experiences, through, for user-generated content experiences, for fan engagement experiences, for, a sequel experiences. Like I don't know that it has to just be a recreation of the live iteration that is running and existing. I almost think that there's actually I think it's additive, right? I don't know that it's just a carbon copy of, for me specifically, what you're describing. It certainly depends on the show. It depends on the content. But I'm really interested in at Jim, at one point, I think we were trying to, when stage doors were stage dooring, I can't even recall if they're back now, but like they were really not back when Broadway first reopened back in the fall. And we were trying to figure out, like, how do we create a virtual stage door? This is such an important piece to fan engagement and shows and the cast and their value and worth and fan engagement. And, so I'd like to see VR and Meta and Stellar and other digital platforms help enhance the live experience too. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there for creative people to come up with that.
Michael Bailey.
So my question comes from a place of curiosity, because I'm always astounded about how much money it takes. And I was in a film producing thing, and like $10 million. How can you even imagine just to hand that out to people? And me where I'm like, I don't have the money. I don't. And I'm curious on how you and Jim really look at this sum of money and say, here is how we allocate that. And like in Broadway, where it's such a risk, I'm like, is there times when you're scared, like I don't know if it's gonna work, but here's $200,000, do your thing. Like to me, that's so fascinating.
Yeah, no, totally. I can start. Jim, you're welcome to chime in. I think everything's a risk. Deciding to walk out your front door is a risk these days. Unfortunately, sending your kids to school is a risk. I mean, it's awful. Everything is a risk. And you have to measure these risks, right? You have to measure the risks you take in business and in art and in life. And I think, speaking personally for myself, I don't get involved with something if I don't feel like it's worthy of its investment, of my ability to raise it, of my ability to ask an investor for it, of my ability to return it, right? Like it has to make sense both from a gut standpoint, but also from a tactical brain standpoint. And so, I find the courage, I find the data, I find the research, I find the proof, I find the budgets and the pro formas, as well as the reviews and the word of mouth, whatever it is it takes to sort of push myself to, ask for the money and then spend the money and then risk the money. Because it's, it just feels like something I believe in and that I must do. I mean, that was kind of what drove me to produce Titanique is, like I said, I didn't really think it was for me and I didn't have the time. And then I saw the piece and I was like, I must do this. And so that's sort of how I approach every time I'm raising and spending money to produce, be it virtually or on stage.
It's interesting because if you wait until you're sure that risk is going to pay off, you just never take good enough risks. That's the fact, but I think it is about risk mitigation. It's about, trying to understand what drives the risk. How do I get rid of the worst of the downside cases? because often you can eliminate the worst outcomes with just a little thinking and planning. And that's one thing. I mean, the other thing is really, it's a lot about who you work with. Like, for example, I've invested with Eva and said to myself, well, I might lose money, but it's going to be good. The worst thing that's going to happen is there'll be a really good show that doesn't quite make our money back. You know what I mean? And that's true, because I know that she's going to deliver something good as a producer, right? So you translate that to other ways of looking at something. You invest in places where you have confidence that there's at least a fundamental or a backstop of quality or value or whatever it is that you're doing. I think that's there. But I mean, it's if it's not a little scary, it's probably not worth doing on some level. You know what I mean? Like, it's probably just not quite enough or quite aggressive enough in my opinion when it comes to stuff like this. That's just my take, though. All right. And a lot of people take far, far, far bigger financial risks than I do. And sometimes I think to myself, wow, that was crazy, right? Like, you just put $1 billion on the line, and, hopefully that'll work out for you. Mark, did you have something? We'll wrap up pretty soon here, but we'll see if we can get as many more questions.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, Eva, that you were able to so quickly adapt and really excel in this new form, given your multimedia background. It almost feels like news broadcast is pretty close to live stream theater in a way. I'm curious and I know that many of the skills that you use in traditional theatrical producing were immediately transferable to this form and were applicable, but I am curious sort of what skills this moving into this medium utilized that maybe theatrical producing was not utilizing at the time. What are things that people who are interested in that type of work can continue to research and improve in the meantime, so that they're positioned to hit the ground running, and what really served you well?
That's a great question, Mark. Question mark.
I heard it. I get that a lot.
I didn't think of that until I said it. I think one of the skills that I didn't know I knew I had a version of, and that I think I enhanced and I bettered and certainly found quite helpful in this, was my visual skills, right? Like, knowing visually what looks good on camera, what sort of concept I could visualize for my production for camera, how I wanted to work with production designers and camera people and director of photography in order to realize the vision, how I wanted to work with choreography. I think, and that's not really from my TV background. I mean, maybe a little bit, but I was like a coordinating producer who dealt with the breaking and developing news and told people what to do and make sure they got there, and, dotted T's and crossed I's. I wasn't really running the visual makeup of the shows. But that's something that I got more comfortable with and familiar with as a theater producer, because I got very involved in my advertising campaigns. I got very involved in how we captured shows and what our key art looked like and what photo setups I liked and how I wanted shows to look on screen when we did TV performances. So I really honed my visual brain throughout my theater producing career for theater, for mostly theater marketing, actually, right? And for those purposes. So then when it came time to create theater for the screen, I sort of leaned back into my gut and my experience of creating visuals for visuals of theater for the screen, but in a different way. And I think that is a skill that can only be honed with experience, can really only be honed by trial and error, by observation a lot, and then by actually throwing yourself into a situation where you make a bunch of decisions and hope they're the right ones. So that's, I think, one kind of big aha that I had from this experience, and that I would absolutely impart to anyone looking to make this transition is really think about your visual picture for your stage show, and what you want to communicate visually through a camera.
Awesome. Well, we are running out of time, and I do want to respect everybody's time. But if there's one more quick thing, I think we can probably handle it. Anybody? All right. If not, thank you guys for coming. So tell us about Titanique. What's coming up with Titanique?
Oh my God. We open in 2 days. It is literally the most fun anyone is having in an off-Broadway theater. I don't care what you think you've heard. I don't care what you surmise by the materials. I can't even begin to tell you how much fun this show is. I said this in the production meeting after the first preview. I never say these things. It was literally the best first preview of my career. It was like we were performing for a bunch of feral animals. The audience was going so wild.
So if that appeals to you, you should definitely go.
No. Why do you keep? You're an investor in the show. Why do you keep saying terrible?
No, that appeals to me. I want to be in that room. I mean, I'm saying.
If what appeals to you is having the best time possible,
yes,
and laughing for 90 minutes straight, and literally spending the entire time being like, what am I watching? How is this so funny? How does this work so well?
Well, that's kind of what I'm trying to create a correct understanding of what this is. If you think you're going to sit there and have a thoughtful night of theater with lots of, motifs and themes, it's not really that. It's not really that.
But there are surprises.
There definitely are.
There is nostalgia, and it has a big heart.
It is a blast. It is, and it runs till when?
It runs till September 25th at the Asylum NYC on 26th Street.
It is a lot of fun. It was fun on screen. I mean, in person. Are there drinks? Can you drink?
There are drinks. You can drink, and
all the better. Because I was drinking when I watched it on Stellar. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, you will drink at the Asylum too. And you will drink our signature drink, the Sip of Dreams.
Right. That's right. Excellent. And I want to tell you guys that my book about this whole topic is called Beyond the Back Row, and it's coming out next month. So if you're interested in finding out more about that, let me know. I'll make sure you guys hear about it as it comes along. Thank you guys for coming. I hope that you got a lot out of this. I did. Eva's a font of knowledge and wisdom and generosity in so many ways. And all of you are too. So I would love to have you back at future Stellar Salons. TBD, TB announced, and more topics. And by all means, if you have concepts of things that you think would be fun to cover, or people that you'd like to meet through this, let us know, and we can definitely try to make that happen. So I'll leave you there just so you can get back to your day, and I'm glad you came. Thanks a lot, everybody.